You think strength means explaining yourself. It means you've already lost. Every challenge exposes your weakness unless you cut, redirect, and dominate without permission. You've been trained to see challenges as conversations. That training made you weak. A challenge is not a request for clarity. It is a probe, a test, a blade pressed lightly against your throat to see if you flinch. The moment you explain yourself, you signal compliance. You accept the challenger's frame, that they have the right to question you, evaluate you, or extract justification. Power never accepts that frame. This chapter forces a surgical lens shift. You stop interpreting resistance as disagreement and start reading it as positioning. Every challenge, whether polite, aggressive, or disguised as concern, is an attempt to move you lower in the hierarchy. The words are irrelevant. The intent is dominance. Most men fail here because they are addicted to being understood. They confuse clarity with authority. They believe if they explain well enough, the tension will dissolve. It doesn't. It concentrates. Explanation feeds the challenger more data, more angles, more leverage. You're not resolving conflict, you're arming the opposition. Power operates on a different logic. Power assumes scrutiny and ignores it. It doesn't rush to correct misconceptions because it doesn't need consensus to act. When challenged, power asks a single internal question: is this worth acknowledging? If the answer is no, silence or redirection becomes the response. If the answer is yes, the reply is not emotional, it is surgical. Reframing the battlefield means understanding that language is terrain. Whoever speaks more loses ground. Whoever clarifies first concedes initiative. The challenger wants you reactive, verbose, defensive. They want movement. Power denies movement. It freezes the frame and forces the challenger to expose themselves. Think in Roman terms. Roman commanders didn't debate mutiny in the open. They didn't explain orders to appease morale. They made examples, not out of cruelty, but efficiency. Order was maintained by certainty, not persuasion. Speech was measured. Silence was weaponized. You've been living under an inverted morality where patience is praised, tolerance is rewarded, and emotional transparency is framed as strength. In reality, those traits make you readable. Readable men are manageable men. Manageable men are disposable. This chapter kills the reflex to defend your identity. When someone challenges you, they are not attacking your idea, they are testing your position. If you rush to protect your idea, you've already failed the test. The correct response begins with emotional detachment. No heat, no urgency, no need to win the argument. The objective is dominance, not agreement. Reframing also means accepting an uncomfortable truth. Not every challenge deserves respect. Some are thrown to provoke reaction, to siphon energy, to destabilize you publicly. Responding seriously to unserious challenges lowers you to their level. Power is selective. It chooses its battles the way a surgeon chooses incisions, only where the cut produces leverage. From this point forward, you stop asking, "How do I respond?" You start asking, "What is this challenge trying to take from me?" Attention, authority, emotional control, social position? Once you see the extraction attempt, the illusion collapses. You realize the challenger needs you more than you need them. They need your reaction to validate their move. Deny it, and the challenge dies on contact. This is the battlefield shift, from conversational equality to hierarchical awareness. You are no longer a participant in dialogue. You are a selector of outcomes. Words become tools, not expressions. Silence becomes an action, not avoidance. By the end of this chapter, the viewer no longer hears challenges as noise. He hears them as tells. And once you hear the tell, the next move becomes obvious.
Power does not argue, it interrupts trajectories. The surgical reply exists for one reason: to collapse momentum. A challenge only works if it gains speed, if it pulls you into its rhythm, its emotional tempo, its false urgency. Most men lose not because the challenger is strong, but because they respond at full length, full emotion, full disclosure. That excess is the opening. A surgical reply is short, intentional, and asymmetrical. It does not meet the challenge head-on. It cuts sideways, removing the challenger's leverage while leaving them exposed. Think of it as a pressure point, not a punch. The goal is not to overpower, it is to destabilize. Here is the core mechanism. You deny the challenger the exchange they are expecting. Every challenge carries an implied script. They expect defense, justification, or escalation. When you deliver none of those, their nervous system falters. Humans are pattern dependent. When the pattern breaks, authority leaks. Length is the first weapon. The shorter the reply, the more power it carries. Brevity signals certainty. It communicates that you do not need to convince, persuade, or explain. Long replies signal uncertainty, even if the logic is sound. Logic does not dominate, position does. Timing is the second weapon. Immediate responses feel emotional. Delayed responses feel calculated. Power moves slower than provocation. A pause, especially in live interaction, forces the challenger to sit with their own words. That silence reframes them as the one seeking validation. The third weapon is misdirection. A surgical reply rarely addresses the challenge directly. It reframes it, minimizes it, or redirects attention elsewhere. This is not evasion, it is control. You decide what the interaction is about. If you accept their framing, you accept their authority. For example, when challenged publicly, the weak man defends his claim. The strong man questions the relevance of the challenge itself, not aggressively, calmly. The challenger is forced to justify why their challenge mattered at all. That reversal is lethal. This mechanism works because challenges are fueled by emotional hooks: ego, morality, urgency, fairness. Surgical replies starve those hooks. No emotional engagement, no moral debate, no visible investment. The challenger suddenly realizes they are performing alone. Another critical principle: never overcorrect. Men panic when challenged and attempt to regain control by explaining everything. This creates a cascade of concessions. Each sentence gives the challenger another angle. A surgical reply gives them nothing to grip. Think of it like removing scaffolding from under an attack. The challenger expected resistance. Instead, the structure disappears. They fall through their own momentum. There is also a hierarchy signal embedded in surgical replies. Superiors do not over-communicate. Subordinates do. When you answer briefly, decisively, or with controlled ambiguity, you unconsciously place yourself above the challenger. They may not articulate it, but they feel it. Importantly, surgical replies are not insults. Insults escalate and reveal emotional investment. This is not about winning verbally, it's about ending the exchange on your terms. The ideal outcome is not silence from them, it's confusion. Confusion is dominance without friction. This chapter installs a new instinct. When challenged, you compress, you do less, you say less, you reveal nothing unnecessary. You respond like a blade, not a hammer. Once this mechanism is understood, challenges stop feeling threatening. They start feeling predictable, and predictability is weakness on their side. You now understand why 5 words can dominate where 50 fail. The next step is recognizing who will challenge you and how they disguise it.
Challenges don't arrive randomly. They arrive wearing costumes. Most men fail not because they can't respond, but because they misidentify the threat. Take the words at face value. They assume good faith. They react to tone instead of intent. That is how predictable challengers keep winning. This chapter strips the disguises off. Once you see the archetype, the challenge loses its power. You stop engaging emotionally because you recognize the pattern. Patterns do not deserve reaction. They deserve management. First archetype, the moral enforcer. This challenger frames his attack as ethics, values, or what's right. He doesn't challenge your competence, he challenges your character. His goal is not truth, it's compliance. If he can make you justify yourself morally, he can put you on trial. Trials have judges, judges have power. The moment you argue morals, you accept his authority to evaluate you. The moral enforcer feeds on your fear of social exile. He wants you explaining intentions, apologizing for tone, clarifying context. Surgical response: deny the moral frame entirely. Do not defend virtue. Virtue is irrelevant to power. Second archetype, the dominance tester. This one is more obvious. He interrupts, challenges openly, questions your decision in front of others. His objective is status extraction. He wants to see if he can move you, emotionally or verbally. If you engage directly, he wins time and attention. If you escalate emotionally, he wins narrative. The dominance tester collapses when his pressure is met with indifference or redirection. He expects friction. Remove it, and his aggression has nowhere to land. Third archetype, the passive-aggressive auditor. This is the most dangerous because he appears harmless. He asks clarifying questions. He expresses concern. He pretends to help while subtly undermining. His weapon is implication. He wants you explaining details, correcting assumptions, revealing internal logic. This archetype drains you slowly. Every response feels reasonable until you realize you've handed over your entire strategic map. Surgical replies starve him. Vague answers, closed loops, no elaboration. Fourth archetype, the intellectual challenger. He hides behind logic, debate, or just playing devil's advocate. His ego is invested in appearing smarter. He provokes long exchanges to display superiority. The trap is obvious. If you try to out-argue him, you've accepted the contest he designed. Power doesn't debate endlessly. It states once and moves on. The intellectual challenger is neutralized by finality. No follow-ups, no sparring. Final archetype, the insecure loyalist. This one pretends to be on your side. He says, "I agree, but..." His challenge is wrapped in loyalty. He tests how much dissent you tolerate. If you indulge him, he learns where your boundaries are and pushes again later. Boundaries are not explained, they are enforced through brevity and consequence. All challengers share one trait: they need your engagement to exist. Without your reaction, their challenge collapses into noise. They are predators of attention, not thinkers of strategy. This chapter rewires your perception. You stop hearing individual words and start seeing behavioral loops. Once an archetype is identified, the response becomes obvious or unnecessary. The mistake most men make is assuming challenges are personal. They are not. They are mechanical. Social systems produce the same challengers again and again. You don't need creativity, you need recognition. Now that you can identify the challenger, the next layer becomes unavoidable. Why this behavior is baked into human nature itself, and why it will never stop. If you believe challenges are accidents, misunderstandings, or personality clashes, you will always lose to them. Challenges are structural. They are not emotional outbursts, they are survival behaviors embedded into human hierarchy. This chapter removes the last comforting illusion that resistance can be eliminated through goodwill, clarity, or competence. It cannot. Where humans gather, dominance games emerge, always. In every social system, tribes, armies, courts, corporations, status must be tested to remain real. Unchallenged authority decays. Challenged authority either hardens or collapses. This is not cruelty, it is selection. Those unable to withstand pressure are replaced. History makes this obvious. Roman power was not maintained through constant violence, but through predictable dominance.
Orders were brief, punishments were visible, explanations were rare. When a Roman general spoke, he did not invite dialogue, he asserted reality. Those who challenged that reality were not debated, they were isolated or erased. The system endured because it understood human nature without sentiment. Modern men are taught the opposite. You were told resistance means miscommunication, that if you just clarify intent, harmony will return. This belief is fatal. It blinds you to the real function of challenges, probing for weakness. Humans test boundaries the way predators test prey. Light pressure first, a comment, a question, a joke. If the target stiffens, explains, or reacts emotionally, pressure increases. If the target remains unmoved, pressure redirects elsewhere. This is not conscious cruelty, it's efficiency. Challenges persist because they work. They redistribute power. They expose insecurity. They identify who can be leaned on, overridden, or ignored. Every challenge is a data-gathering operation. The challenger is asking, "Can I move you?" Most men answer yes without realizing it. They justify decisions, they clarify motives, they over-communicate. Each response gives away rank. Each explanation lowers their center of gravity. This chapter forces a brutal realization. You are always being evaluated, even when the challenger smiles, especially then. Human beings do not respect fairness, they respect consequences. They do not follow logic, they follow certainty. This is why moral arguments fail against power, and why power rarely bothers with moral defense. Morality is invoked by those seeking leverage, not by those who possess it. Challenges also serve another function, internal sorting. Groups subconsciously pressure members to reveal who can hold tension and who collapses under scrutiny. Those who crack become labor, those who hold become leaders or threats. The system adapts accordingly. Once you accept this, resentment disappears. You stop being offended by challenges because you understand them as natural phenomena, like gravity. You don't argue with gravity, you adjust your stance. The men who suffer most are those who believe they are exempt. Intelligence does not protect you. Competence does not protect you. Good intentions do not protect you. In fact, they often make you more vulnerable because they encourage explanation and openness, both exploitable traits. This chapter installs a colder operating system. You no longer ask, "Why is he doing this?" You ask, "What does this behavior extract if I allow it?" Once you see challenges as inevitable, you stop trying to eliminate them. You start managing them. You accept pressure as the cost of position, and you realize the only real mistake is responding like someone who hasn't earned power yet. The next chapter moves from understanding to execution. You will learn how to respond strategically, not emotionally, so challenges no longer accumulate, escalate, or drain you.
Understanding power is useless if your behavior doesn't change under pressure. This chapter is not about clever lines or verbal tricks. It installs protocols, default actions you execute automatically when challenged. Strategy replaces impulse. You no longer decide how to respond in the moment. The decision was made in advance. The first protocol, selection over reaction. You do not respond to every challenge. You select. Selection is power. When you answer everything, you communicate availability. Availability invites extraction. Strategic men let most challenges die unattended. Silence is not weakness when it is intentional. It is filtration. Ask one internal question before any response. Does engaging increase my position or decrease theirs? If the answer is neither, you disengage. No justification, no closure. The second protocol, compression. When response is necessary, you compress your language to the minimum effective dose. One sentence, sometimes one phrase, never paragraphs. Compression signals certainty and control. It denies the challenger conversational oxygen. Long responses feel satisfying but cost position. Short responses feel cold but preserve sovereignty.
The third protocol, frame reversal. If a challenge threatens your authority, you do not defend within its frame, you flip the frame. You question relevance, timing, or necessity, not aggressively, but matter-of-factly. This forces the challenger to explain why they are challenging at all. Explanations move downward in hierarchy, force them upward. The fourth protocol, delayed execution. Immediate replies reveal emotional investment. Strategic delay creates asymmetry. It reminds the challenger that your time is not equal to theirs. Delay also removes heat from the interaction, allowing you to respond with precision instead of reflex. You are never late. You are unavailable. The fifth protocol, closure without consensus. This is where most men collapse. They want agreement. They want the challenger to understand. Power does not require understanding. It requires compliance or disengagement. You close interactions decisively, even if tension remains, especially if tension remains. Unresolved tension is not failure, it is a boundary marker. These protocols feel uncomfortable at first because they violate social conditioning. You were trained to be cooperative, transparent, and accommodating. Those traits are rewarded at lower levels of hierarchy and punished at higher ones. Strategic response is not cruelty, it is efficiency. It reduces friction, limits exposure, and preserves authority. You are not escalating conflict, you are ending it early. This chapter also introduces restraint. Power is not constant assertion. Overuse of force reveals insecurity. Sometimes the strongest move is neutrality. Sometimes it's redirection. Sometimes it's silence followed by action later. Action always outweighs words. By the end of this chapter, the viewer no longer feels trapped when challenged. There is no panic, no rush, no need to perform. The protocols run automatically. The challenger either adapts or removes themselves. The final transformation remains, the death of the old identity that needed to explain, justify, and be seen as reasonable. The most dangerous man is not the aggressive one. It is the one who no longer needs to explain himself.
This is where weak men look for comfort. None is coming. Power is not a toolkit you borrow when convenient. It is a stance you inhabit, or you are rejected by it. This final chapter is a warning, not an invitation. Everything you've learned up to this point will fail if applied inconsistently. Power punishes hesitation more than ignorance. The moment you retreat back into explanation, apology, or overclarity, the system updates its assessment of you. Once that happens, recovery is expensive. Here is the truth most men avoid. Power is always watching for leaks. You don't lose position through one mistake. You lose it through pattern recognition. People subconsciously track your behavior over time. If you are surgical today and verbose tomorrow, you are not strategic. You are unstable. Instability invites testing. Testing escalates. This is why power is selective. Not everyone should wield it, and not everyone can sustain it. Many men learn dominance techniques only to misuse them, overcorrecting, posturing, becoming aggressive. That is not power. That is compensation, and compensation is transparent. True power is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't need to win arguments publicly. It lets outcomes do the speaking. Men who misuse silence, brevity, or indifference as intimidation are quickly exposed. Their behavior reeks of insecurity. The warning is simple. Do not perform power. Be consistent with it. There is also a cost you must accept. When you stop explaining yourself, some people will resent you. When you stop engaging every challenge, some will label you arrogant, cold, or dismissive.
Those labels are filters. They remove people who benefited from your availability. Power always reduces your circle before it stabilizes it. You must also understand that these strategies do not make you invincible. They make you less exploitable. Challenges will still come. Pressure will still exist. The difference is that pressure no longer controls you. You decide what enters, what is ignored, and what is cut. This is where selection becomes internal. You select your responses. You select your battles. You select who has access to your reasoning and who does not. That selectivity is the final signal of sovereignty. One last inversion must be accepted. Being liked is not the same as being safe. In many environments, it is the opposite. Likability increases access. Access increases extraction. Power reduces access deliberately. If you apply this material correctly, your life will feel quieter. Fewer confrontations, fewer explanations, fewer emotional spikes. Not because people stopped challenging, but because they learned it no longer works. This is not about domination for its own sake. It is about survival in systems that reward those who can hold tension without leaking energy. You are no longer required to prove yourself. You are no longer required to explain yourself. You are no longer required to be understood. Only one requirement remains: consistency. Fail that, and everything collapses. Maintain it, and challenges become irrelevant noise. That is the final lesson.